right, if you need to say something mean, please say it now, because I can always trim this off the video.
Fat,
Marshall.
fat. Huge.
Okay, all right, we're done with that. All right, I got all 10 people. All right, we're gonna review. I know this is not super exciting, but I do think this is super important to think about as you're writing this and drafting this final paper. All right, so we're gonna start with some knowledge check questions. You're gonna have to, you can answer with your iPad and not with your face, okay? So take a look at this question. Tell me what you think. That should have a question mark on it, sorry. Okay, it's definitely good that we're reviewing this. I'm just looking for one more, there we go. Okay, a couple people have changed their answer, and that's probably a good thing. Okay. Yeah. All right, most of us landed in the right place. Yeah, this is where you would use a summary, okay? Because you're not including the details, you're just getting the main idea. So if you said summary, nice job there. Okay. Okay, when using a direct quote, you can omit unnecessary details by using what? All right, I'm just waiting on, looks like, here we go. Yeah. All right, good instincts. Yeah, I know ellipses, and I know last year, I don't know if Mr. Liebeck talked about doing this. I know he's not a huge fan of it. I think it's because a lot of times you have to know what you're doing to use an ellipses. But yeah, if there's like a detail on the direct quote that you don't need, you can absolutely use an ellipses to eliminate that. All right, moving on. Number 3, when should you indent a block quotation in APA? Do you know the answer? This was in that chapter. You guys are good. You guys are really good. Okay. Yeah. Last period I had a lot of people say 4 lines, and that's because that's MLA style. That's MLA style. 40 words or more is APA, so yeah, you're kind of counting your words there. All right. Doesn't take much to get to 40 words, by the way. All right, if you make changes or add information to a direct quote to clarify something, what should you use there? Okay. If you said brackets, you are correct. Yeah. Some of you said parentheses initially, but it would be brackets. So an example would be if the direct quote uses the pronoun she, and you know that you need to specify to your audience who she is, you could replace she, in brackets, place the person's name. That's going to help clarify that. All right, this is something we should all get right at this point, I feel like. I think I've harped on this enough. Marshall, you better change that answer. Yeah. Okay. Inside. Always. If I had a quarter for every time I made this comment on a student's paper, I would be rich. Okay, so this is something I don't want to have to comment on anymore. It's always inside. Except when you have the parenthetical documentation at the end. Okay. What do you think? And this was mentioned in the chapter, and there's a reason for it. We're all over the place on this one. Wow. Okay, we got an F on this one. That's okay. Yeah, it should be about the same length. And There's a reason. There's a reason. Because when you paraphrase something, you're including all the information. You're not changing the information. You're not leaving stuff out. You're putting all that information back in your own words. So therefore, it should be about the same length. All right, let's go to number 7. Good instinct on this one. It's called patch writing. We all got that one right. This is where I see a lot of unintentional plagiarism. I'm gonna say that again, unintentional plagiarism. A student thinks that just because they used a few synonyms for the original words, maybe they have altered a few of the structures, maybe they flipped it around or whatever, that it's okay, but it's really not. So again, unintentional plagiarism, that's where we see this. A student thinks that they've changed the original enough that it's okay, and it's not. That's what makes it difficult. All right, number 8. What do you think? So far, so good. None of us had a good instinct on this one. Yeah, you absolutely should. So even if you're paraphrasing, I'm going to start it off with Morris claims, and I'm going to put that paraphrase in there, and then I'm also going to make sure I cite it properly. So it needs to be attributed, even if it's a paraphrase. That's a common misconception. Students think if I paraphrase it, I don't have to cite it or introduce it, and that's not necessarily the case. All right, what do you think? True or false on this one? Same issue last period. We're split in half right now. Yeah. This is the problem with this, right? When you're summarizing, it's really just the main idea that you're jotting down or trying to communicate to your audience. So summarizing is not the details, it's just the main idea. It's a very powerful way to include research into your essay without, cluttering it up with a bunch of heavy quotes. Okay. Last question. This is something that I've really had to change my mindset on coming from the MLA situation. So if you are currently, I'm still waiting on a couple people here. If you're currently thinking, well, yeah, it's present tense, like Morris claims, Morris asserts, right? That's because you're thinking MLA, because that's what MLA does. The idea is that the article exists, it always exists now and in the future, and so that person who wrote it kind of, the way I've always thought about it is they exist in time forever, so we're gonna keep it present tense. But APA does not do that. APA, it would be, Marshall claimed, or Morris claimed. I keep going to Marshall's first name. So you always want to use the last name. So yeah, it's past tense most of the time. There's an exception in that chapter you should definitely take a look at. And when we get into the draft, more in the drafting phase, we can talk more about that as well. Okay. All right, that's the end of my little knowledge check, but you will be participating in this Pear Deck some more, so don't put your iPad away. So let's just go over this very briefly. Again, you read this for homework. So you should quote when the exact wording is worth repeating. It's unique, it's interesting, it's worded in a way that you just can't replicate. And is that an exact science? No, as you'll see later. And then also paraphrase sources that are not worth quoting, but have the details that you want to include. And so many times I'll comment to a student when they include a direct quote. I'll say, would this be better as a paraphrase, right? Does it need to be directly quoted? And again, summarize those longer passages. When you, again, example, results of a research study, do you need to include that entire results paragraph? No, just give us the main idea. Okay, let's talk about quoting more specifically. The idea is that typically when you're quoting, they're shorter bits of information. So keep that in mind. And if you do have a longer one, you do need to block it. Okay. Now on your iPads, I realize that's not easy to do. If you ever need a block quote to be blocked, and you can't figure out how to do it on your iPad, just come up and ask me, and I'll grab my MacBook, get on your document, and figure it out together. Okay. If you omit anything from the quote, you can use those ellipses, and if you change anything or add anything to clarify the quote, you can use those brackets. You want to use the punctuation correctly, and in particular, periods and commas go inside quotation marks. And then exclamation points, question marks, semicolons, and colons actually go outside of quotation marks, except when they're part of the quoted material. Okay, I always have to look that up myself, so I get it. All right, so looking at this. This is an article about organ donation. Who's an organ donor in here? Anybody an organ donor? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so when you read this quote, and you tell me what you think. Is it quote worthy, or should you paraphrase it? Interesting. This is very different from last period. Now again, is this an exact science? It isn't. Does this quote present information in such a unique and exciting way that you feel like it should be directly quoted? I would say no. I would say you could easily paraphrase that information. I just don't think it's anything that exciting. Again, this is really subjective, and I understand that, you may sometimes think, well, that is a really great quote. Maybe somebody else doesn't have the same opinion, okay? But again, I think that one, you could easily paraphrase that based on what it's saying. All right, let's try this again. Let's see what you think about this one. This is an article about dementia. Really look at what the quote is saying and think, would I include this word for word, or would I paraphrase it? Okay, you guys have the instinct on this one. As the last period, very different. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think this quote has a really unique message. I mean, when I think of dementia, I really think that we're lacking dignity. I think of people who lose their dignity. So when this quote, immediately my mind's like, oh, really, right? There is dignity in dementia if we say there is. And I'm immediately drawn into that quote. There's wisdom and humor and radiance if we could only see it. That would be like, might be a good sort of kind of hook quote, or maybe a way to conclude the essay with a strong quote that leaves an impression on the reader. I agree with you, most of you. Some of you said it still should be a paraphrase. Okay, let's talk about this idea, right? So we're restating information with a paraphrase in your own words, and you're using your own sentence structure. And guys, it's really hard. It's really, really hard to paraphrase well. I always say to students, it's like paraphrasing in a writing class is like doing calculus in a math class. It's just a lot of brain power. You have to really think about it. Because you have to include all the main points. You have to make sure that you're representing what the author or authors have said exactly as they meant it to be communicated. And that's very difficult. And it should be about the same length as the original source. And then what happens is, this is where we see the unintentional plagiarism, where students will borrow too much of it. They'll borrow the sentence structure, or they'll do that patch writing where they just kind of change a few things about it and think it's okay. So there are some really good examples in that chapter to kind of help you understand that concept if you're just like not super sure about it. Okay, so The way I paraphrase is I will read the quote multiple times and I'll think, okay, what is this thing saying? What are the key terms? And then I set it aside and I think about something else for a minute. And then I go back to it and I'm like, okay, let me see if I can write this down in my own words and my own sentence structure. So that's like a good way to do it. But it should be in your own words and your own sentence structure. And then if you can't get away from using certain terms, then put quotation marks around those terms. So if you're doing like something really sciencey, and there's a term that you just can't change, just put quotation marks around that specific term. And then always indicate the source. Even though it's a paraphrase and it's not a direct quote, you still have to attribute the source. Okay, so I want you to take a few moments and read this quote from the New York Times article, "The way you build muscle is the way you build a life." I want you to read that quote several times. Okay? See if you can get the key terms, the main ideas. Okay, did you lock in? You know what that quote says? Everybody got it? Okay. All right, random fact. Did you know that cats really aren't nocturnal? Like so many people think that they're nocturnal. They are actually crepuscular. I bet Max knows what that means. Did you say yes or no? Okay, what does that mean? Oh, okay.
Sorry. Wait, give me a second. I have to remember the
Okay.
shorter term.
Well, I really put you under the gun there, didn't I?
Yeah. Like I know what it means,
Okay. You
but
want me
putting
to
me
help?
on the spot to explain it.
Yeah, it's basically that cats are more active at dusk and dawn. So like at the bookends of the night, right? So they still kind of get lazy in the middle, but in the like when it's first getting dark outside and when it's first getting light outside, that's when they're the most active. So crepuscular. I challenge you today to go to lunch and use the term crepuscular.
I'm
Okay,
crepuscular.
but, all right. Who's gonna do it? Anybody?
I'm crepuscular.
Okay.
Right now.
All right. Can you paraphrase? See you, Claire. Can you paraphrase that quote I showed you a little while ago?
No. I remember.
Try to think of what it said, right? I tried to keep it pretty simple. Juliana, you're off to a great start, but can you think of a different phrase to use for adaptable?
I don't even know what the quote says.
So Haley Ecker, I would cut that. I would say muscles in the body change according to, instead of using the word adapt.
Am I the
I
only one
would
who
use-
doesn't remember what the quote said?
Yeah, sure, that's how you spell
Okay.
muscles.
Just do the best you can.
It's muscle is spelled function. Yeah, it's literally right there.
Oh,
Okay,
that is-
Aya, that's a really good start. That's a really good start. Can you think about what the rest of it said? Okay, Max, I would think about, okay, you have grow and shrink, and that's the language from the original. Can you like make that a
Oh,
little bit
right.
different?
Oops. Yeah.
Okay, I like Haley Bungard. I like that expansion idea there.
Oh, Mike, I cannot remember the keywords.
Okay.
I feel like that's.
Okay, Max, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
So Haley Ecker, you're just missing that second piece of that quote, which you may be struggling to remember. Okay, Marshall, that's not too bad. Pretty basic, but not too bad.
Oh, that's not.
That's not.
Still.
All right. When I said it was difficult, is it not difficult? It's difficult, right? It's really difficult, and you have to really, exert your brain to kind of think about how you would put this in your own words. And sometimes it takes multiple tries. You look at what you wrote down, and then you check the original and go, ooh, that's a little too close, or I use some of the same words. I'm going to go back to the quote. Take a look at, think about what you wrote. I know you can't see it now. Think about what you wrote. I always try to pull the key terms. Okay, so I'm thinking muscles, adaptable, they grow, they shrink, right? And so those are kind of the words that I would zero in on and like to get the main idea and then try to put that in my own words. You might say something like, and several of you said this. I'm just going back to my thing here. Muscle tissues change based on how we use them. So the idea, instead of getting away from the word adapting, maybe changing would be one way to do that. And maybe you might say, if we consistently work out, they will increase in size. But if we do not, they become smaller. Right? Not might, they will become smaller. So you just have to kind of really zero in and try to put it in your own words. It's just really difficult. That's why students get lazy. And they're just like, I'm just putting the direct quote in because it's easy. And I totally get it. But there are just some things, like this is not really quote-worthy material. It's definitely a paraphrase. Okay. All right, we did all that. All right, and finally, the last concept we're going to review today is summarizing. And this is probably the one that students utilize the least. And it can be a really good tool in your toolkit for writing this essay. It's just the main ideas. So if you just need the main idea from something, like a research article, you don't need the details, just the big picture. And, again, use your own words and make sure you indicate the source. So it's really underutilized by a lot of students. I think mainly because they don't completely understand when to use it and how to use it. All right, last thing we're going to talk about today would be the verb tenses and signal phrases. You guys did they say, I say last year with Mr. Liebeg. I know you know signal phrases. Maybe try to get away from the states and the says and try to use something that's more intentional. Okay. So yes, if you say that somebody's arguing something or something that somebody's agreeing when they say, then it's just communicating a lot more to your audience. Okay? Make sure that you are framing these quotes out like you learned in they say, I say. And indicate the source. And again, something that I struggle with, APA or using past tense verbs. So check your draft so far to see how you frame those quotes and see if you need to make any changes there. Okay, that's one concept I just struggle with. Right? Okay, that is the end of my review of quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. Anybody have any comments, questions, or suggestions? What did you say?
Look it.
Book it. I should have done a book it.